This is Greg, the single guy, and Matt is on vacation. Joining me is Kent Arimura as my co-host as we interview a teaching couple by the name of Aaron and Tabitha, elementary teachers that found their way to India for several years of teaching. Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Greg, the single guy, and Matt, the family guy. We're recording episodes from around the globe to tell you about the best kept secret in education. That's right, it's teaching overseas. We're glad to have you. All right, welcome to ITP, the International Teacher Podcast, and I have a few guests with me, and before I introduce them, we do have another change. It is Kent with me once more. Hi, Kent, how are you?
Hey, it's great to be back here. Thanks for having me back.
Kent and we're here in the desert, and Matt must be out playing golf or something. I think he's taking a course right now, so thank you for stepping in as my co-host.
Love to be here.
I can't wait to introduce these two. This is a teaching couple that we're teaching in downtown LA, if I'm not mistaken, and then they were teaching in India, and I think also China. Was it China?
No.
Where was it?
No, we've just done LA. We've taught in Dallas.
Oh, okay. And then you went out to India, and then you went to the Middle East at some point. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I really want to hear about India, but LA, oh my gosh. So let me introduce you a teaching couple. They both teach elementary right now. So this is Aaron and Tabitha, and they're joining us for today. So we have a great show coming up for you. Welcome to our show, both of you.
Looking forward to it.
Good to be here.
All right. It's like a real radio show, isn't it? Yeah. So we started off, Kent and I love talking to other teachers overseas, and you guys have been teaching for a long time, like I have, like 20 years, 21 for you, Tabitha. You both taught in inner city Los Angeles. And what were you teaching there, Aaron?
I started out teaching fifth grade, and then I taught fifth grade a couple years, and then fourth grade.
What about your first week?
Yes, my first week of teaching. I don't really remember my first week of teaching in LA because I had a kidney stone, and so I was given a lot of medicine. It's a blur to me, but I was afraid to call in sick. My first ever job, I thought, I'm not gonna, set a bad, I'm gonna look bad to my principal my first week after I just got hired. So I got the medicine, and I don't really remember it.
You're a trooper, man. What a trooper.
Yep.
I tell you what, you got enough of that medicine for us this year?
Hey, now, this is a family show here. But Aaron, you guys were at different schools, though?
We were at
what they called sister schools.
Sister schools, yeah. Mm-hmm. They were just actually maybe a quarter mile apart. Uh-huh. And both huge schools. I mean, over 2,000 at K through 5, each of them.
Yeah, we did year-round because of that. So we would have a track system. We would teach, there would be an A, B, C track. When A and B were on, C would be off. And then you would rotate in and out. So 3 teachers shared 2 classrooms, and you would move classrooms periodically throughout the year if you were on or off.
Wow.
Yeah. One classroom got done on a Friday, and you started on a Monday. So we know how to set up a room fast, I guess you would say.
And then you guys went to Dallas, right? And I don't want to focus too much on the States, but what this is setting up is then you had a transition into international. You went from teaching in the States with that amount of... Well,
we went back. After Dallas, we went back to Los Angeles and actually got a position in private schools, in a private school.
Okay.
And then that's where kind of we traveled over, and we traveled over to China. We went overseas for just for a summer. And when we were over there, our tour guide actually suggested it to us about teaching English in China. And so then when we went back, that's when we kind of started researching.
Yeah, and then we also saw a vacation home search.
House Hunters
International on, TLC
show,
or
TLC. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've seen it once or twice, I think.
And we saw 2 of them actually that were teachers moving overseas. One was a teacher moving to Abu Dhabi, and one was to Rome. And like that kind of opened our eyes, and
That's enough to get you questioning what you can do if you can move to Rome as a teacher.
Right.
Wow. So did you go through a recruiting agency?
Yeah. So I'd done some research, and so we signed up with a recruiting agency. So we were going to San Francisco to the fair, and
The ISS?
the ISS fair.
okay.
And we did San Francisco in February, early February.
Right. And I had researched beforehand the schools that were going to be there, and I picked about 10 that I knew that I would be more interested in, that we'd be more interested in. And I actually sent out, I Googled, who the principal was or director was, and I emailed out our resumes ahead of time. And
Shotgun effect.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
For like 10 or... Wait a second. Tabitha, did he let you pick some schools too?
It was we both kind of narrowed down for what I would be willing to go to, that type of thing. Aaron is definitely the researcher in our family. So he does a lot of background research. Then he shows me kind of the final product, and then I pick from there.
He does all the work, and then you'll make the decision.
That's correct.
That describes it.
That is
very well,
exactly
yeah.
right.
It's like you do restaurants
That's
now,
how
right?
that's how most decisions happen in our family.
Oh, that's so funny.
Before we continue on, I bet our listeners can tell that, Tabitha, you're probably not originally from California. I was just wondering if you could both tell our listeners where you were born and
That's a good
raised.
point. I forgot to ask.
I'm originally from Arkansas. I lived there the first 19 years, and then moved to Texas for graduate school. And then from there is when we went to LA.
Odd story with me, I was actually born in Memphis, Tennessee on the day of Elvis's funeral. Grandparents couldn't get to the hospital in time because of the traffic. I lived in Memphis for 3 days, and then my parents took off. And so I've lived at different places, but I've lived more of my life in California than anywhere else.
And Kent, you were dropped off at an orphanage or something.
That's right. That's right. I was hatched out of an egg, as my
I never
parents like to
asked you
say.
where you're originally from.
From the suburbs of Seattle.
Suburbs of Seattle. Okay. And you grew up there your whole life.
That's correct.
And did you teach in Seattle before you went
I
overseas?
did, just north of Seattle in a town.
I know we
called
talked we got to interview Kent, like one of the earlier ones. I interviewed Kent about teaching in Yemen. So that's an exciting one. If you want to, anyway, listeners want to go back and listen to Kent and all that. We laughed a whole lot, right?
So he's just the buffer. He's just the comedic relief, and he's just gone.
Right.
It makes sense. It all
Just
makes
long
sense.
periods of silence.
It all makes sense.
Matt said, you know what? If I'm not there, we need to get Kent onto this show because it's just a laugh, So let's get in. You went to ISS. Did you, and I don't ask a whole lot of people this, think back. Did you guys go to all of the, you arrive at ISS and other job fairs are the same. You arrive there on the weekend. Did you stay at the hotel?
Yes, we did. Big plus to stay at the hotel.
Yeah. So that's one of my first things I say. Number one, stay at the hotel, whatever recruiting fair you're at. And did you guys, as a teaching couple, did you interview together through the first round, or did you separate for the first round? Or did you argue about it?
No.
No, we have quite a different story.
Ours is a unique situation. The fact that
if you remember, Aaron mentioned that he had sent out resumes prior. So
one of the schools, which is in India, had actually contacted us ahead of time and set up an interview for us.
You got pink slip already. You came in with an interview.
Well,
Yes.
we came in, we had already interviewed online, and pretty much we
met them the day
morning
before the conference began.
Yeah.
And so we met them at a coffee shop just right outside of the hotel, or even maybe it was downstairs at the hotel coffee shop.
Yeah.
And that's when they met us face to face.
I think they just wanted to make sure we weren't, just.
And they loved you right away.
Yeah, I think
We got offered the job
Did they offer you? Because you had already interviewed with them, like on Skype or
Yes.
something, right?
Right.
Back
we
in the
had
day.
Skyped with them.
And they were very generous. They said, we understand if you want to interview with other schools, but we'd love to make you an offer. And so we had planned to stay at the hotel for the 3 days, and then we decided that was one of the top schools on our list.
Yeah.
So we took it, and I think we only stayed there one night
We
instead.
just stayed there one night.
Did you interview with any of the other schools then?
No.
Did you go through
we
the process?
didn't. As a matter of fact, what was kind of funny is we actually went down. For those of you that've been to the fair, you go down, you tell them, when you go and tell them that you've accepted your interview or whatever. So we went down, or we accepted the position. We went down to tell them, and they didn't believe us. And they said, no, the job fair hasn't started. You're confused. Nobody's been offered any jobs. and
you're like, no, you're confused, lady.
And so we're like, no, we've been offered the job. We need to take our name out of the pool. And I guess what you could say what's interesting is one of the interviews we had lined up is for the school that we're now working at.
That's
but
interesting.
we did not go to that one because we had accepted.
Now, anyone who works with Tabitha and Aaron knows that they're both fantastic teachers. But let me ask you this. So often, which happens when couples, teaching couples apply, schools usually tend to be interested in one or the other. Did you guys get that feeling that they were really after one of you and the other one was just kind of along for the ride?
She's always the top pick as far as the school goes. So.
He's a very smart.
Aaron.
Well said, Aaron. Well said. He'll be going home tonight. This is good.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have this fascination, and it's part of me, is I have a fascination with the interview process and the whole job fair. I guess one of the takeaways from what your story is that researching ahead of time is really important. But I do have a question. Are you glad that you went and met them in person? Because I think they're going to have, even post-COVID, I think they're still going to have face-to-face interviews at somehow, because even seeing somebody face-to-face, you read their... you know what they're all about. Even in a few seconds, you can read somebody on the other side of the table.
Right. Yeah. I think it was very beneficial to see them face to face, but something that they did ahead of time that was really gracious of them is they actually, after our initial interview, they set us up to talk to another couple who worked at the school. And so that was another layer of before we met with them. And so we met with a couple who had been there several years. I think they wanted us to just...
Were they coming out? I'm sorry, I interrupted. Are they coming out of the school? They were looking for their next job at the fair? Or
no, they were in India.
In India.
Oh, currently. Yeah. So they set it up so you could talk with them on phone or whatever, or Skype and see what their interests are. I think quality schools really do that.
Yeah. Well,
what's the name of the India school that you guys were at?
The American Embassy School in New Delhi.
In New Delhi, okay. Yeah. What a great story to call it. I like to call it onboarding. Usually the schools that have done their research and that have been lucky enough to find somebody, they will agree to meet them at the fair. I have always wanted to be at the fair to meet them, even if they wanted to hire me.
Right.
I had to size them up. I mean, I don't know. It's something about me. I had a former principal, I had a former superintendent that said, I'll quote him, he said, everyone looks good on paper. And you can look really good on video, and you can but when you're sitting in front of somebody else and you're in an interview sort of situation, there's no hiding things. You can get a good read on somebody. So did they at least get your bill? Did they buy you the coffee?
Yes. Yes, they did. So then we ended up just getting to have a nice sightseeing tour of San Francisco.
When they described the school to you and you did your research, the school pitched themselves to you, how well, in looking back at it now, how well did that match up, your experience, with the way that they described your experience might be?
I think it really matched up. I mean, I still, when I think back to just to that campus and how we were greeted when we came and how they took care of us and let us, helped us settle in it was top notch the whole way, and great leadership. I mean, from the director to the principal, I really have nothing but positive things to say.
Yeah, they did a really nice job of helping us, I guess you could say, assimilate to a certain degree into the country. We arrived 2 weeks prior to the students coming, and the first week was basically just picking us up, taking us to markets, taking us to the local malls, taking us to different points around that we would be interested in so that we could settle in.
I mean, they gave us a lot of money at the airport. They left our refrigerator full, stocked when we got there. So
those are all those little things for onboarding that you really need because you're in total culture shock.
Right.
Some of us have never been out of the country before, and you arrive in a country that's so vastly different. I can only imagine what New Delhi's like with the amount of people, the amount of pollution. And there's a lot of humanity there, and you guys don't know where to go next. So when you arrived, did they put you in a hotel and you had to find your own hotel?
No, that was one of the reasons why they were on our list is they provided housing for us. So we did not have to go search for anything. So we were picked up and taken
directly to
our flat.
But when I was in Cambodia, I arrived and I was in a hotel for 2 weeks while I was looking with local realtors on finding an apartment. And I tell you what, of all the schools I've been to and several different experiences, I like the fact that schools provide housing, that they work out with the rental people. Egypt was like that too. That was the opposite too, where you go and stay in a hotel for a while, and then all of a sudden, by first week, you had to be out and you had to have your own place. And our realtor could have taken us, for anything. I mean, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't speak Arabic. Or interesting. When people are looking at international schools, they should see whether or not they get a stipend for rent or do they get school housing. And there's more questions you can ask from a school, I think, the better before you agree, right?
Right. And I would say that it also depends on the country that you're going to. Possibly cities in Europe, it might be fun to find your own place if they gave you a stipend.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's important to know, is depending on the country that you're going to.
That's a good point, Tabitha. I remember the only drawback to it is sometimes you have to ask lots of questions. My very first year overseas, I arrived and I had a roommate. And my roommate insulted everybody at the bar within the first couple nights. He insulted me. He insulted every single other person out of 20 people at the table. And I'm not even gonna bother saying his name. I don't need to say his name, but he insulted everybody so badly that I didn't talk to him for the next 7 months. And then he moved out because he was mad because I gave my maid a key to the house and I hadn't asked him. He didn't want a maid, and he made that as an excuse. And then the school went through a whole bunch of stuff to get him his own apartment and goodbye and yada, yada, yada. I mean, there's lots of stories out there. I mean, when you arrive in a country, you don't know what's going to go on. I'm glad you guys had an agreement that when you arrived and you find out that you're teaching what you thought you were teaching. Some schools, and I mean, there's all different schools, but the India school that you guys went to, it sounds like New Delhi, gave you a contract and said, you're teaching this, and they didn't change it. Because sometimes they do that to you, right? I arrived in one country and they tell me I'm teaching, elementary, 5th grade, and all of a sudden I'm teaching tech instead. Last minute. You had no idea.
Sometimes I think do you guys feel like it was a leap of faith sometimes, going from, the country that you were born and raised in, you hadn't worked outside the United States, you went to India. Do you feel like there's a certain element of luck involved in that? Or do you feel like, we really did our homework, we really felt prepared, and we knew going into it that we were going to have this great experience?
I think a little bit of both. I think that it's a combination of research and luck. I mean, I don't think I could attribute it to one way or the other, but I mean, definitely starting out at a school like that was a little lucky, but at the same time, again, I'd done a lot of research and I knew those, like I said, probably 10 schools that matched our criteria of what we were looking for.
Great.
Yeah. Good question though.
Yeah, great question. That's why we have Kent along once in a while. He asks questions.
And just so the audience knows, I look really good on this podcast. I look very good.
So Tabitha, you mentioned that your school in California, you had thousands of students, right? What was it like when you went to India? What was the teaching comparison? You were coming from the States and you taught in Dallas and you taught in California in different situations. Tell us what it was like when you landed and you go to your classroom and you're teaching in India, in New Delhi.
Oh, I think because we had come from LA, the amount of people wasn't a shock because we were used to seeing a lot of people and we were at large schools. It was probably nice because...
maybe the traffic was a little bit better in India.
Have you been to India?
I've been to LA.
Maybe different types of traffic is what we should be talking about. But the school itself was just such a beautiful, beautiful campus. And class sizes in the States, especially where we were coming from, we had very large class sizes. And so it was nice. I mean, I had a class of 38 in LA 1 year. And so to have a class of 20, 22 students, it was nice.
And what were you teaching that time in India?
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade. Mm-hmm. So you had 22 students in a class. Was it a pretty big classroom for that many students? Or
yeah, we had. I mean, that was another great thing about the school is they were very good about kind of trying new things, and they were always on the cutting edge of things. And so as teachers, if you had a vision or an idea, they would try their best to help get in that furniture or rearrange the space for you. And so it was just very nice to come in and to have a lot of the things technology-wise, some of the things that we hadn't had before. It was nice to have them. And Aaron and I taught in a classroom side by side for that year. We were both fourth grade teachers. Which door are you going into? Because his class, and then it was my class.
I have so many questions to follow up on this one, but I do want to ask what your students were like. Was this mostly students from India, a true international school, a lot of U.S. students? I noticed that you said it was an embassy school, so a U.S. embassy school.
Yes, that's the name. So it's actually established by Congress back in the 1950s. However, I would say it's probably about 20%, 25% maybe American passport holders. But you had all the other embassies that were in the New Delhi area. So they sent their children to that school. Most of them, a lot of them did.
It's the best kind.
So we had a lot of that. There's a huge Samsung operation in Delhi. And so we had a lot of students whose parents worked for the Samsung Corporation. And so you had that element as well. So, I mean, and there were multinational companies international companies that were, trying to get their foothold there, or were buying some subsidiary in India that had, workers from various European, Asian countries. So it was a very,
very diverse.
Very diverse. It was like a mini, United Nations in your classroom, which was really cool.
Yeah, my Cambodia school was like that. I've had a couple of schools like that because of the different kinds of schools like Kent mentioned. There's the host national schools. Like my Honduran school was 97% Hondurans. It was all upper class 1%ers. And then it was a smattering of Koreans and then like 3 American kids. But your school, the New Delhi school, the embassy school, sounds like it's one of those ones where there's like 70 different countries represented by
Easily.
multiple passport holders.
Easily.
They're not just from India and have a passport to that other country. They're actually, their color of skin, their cultures, their languages, their mother tongues are all different, and they're mixed together. Isn't that a fascinating classroom?
It was. We easily, in 2022 students, had 13, 14 different nationalities.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Do you have any stories about the classrooms or student incidents with that kind of stuff?
Well, no, I would say the stories about the school would just be they loved celebrating cultural
India and
Indian
cultural awareness.
Yeah, and so we would Holi was a big holiday, and so they would have on campus that weekend they'd have the Holi celebration where you threw the paint on each other, chalk or whatever it is on each other. You had a lot of assemblies where they would bring in Indian dancers and Indian music, and so it was always. And
we actually had a dedicated week called India Week every year, and they would bring local craftsmen and craftswomen to show like glass work and beading and tie dye, and then you'd have.
They'd make the food too. They'd come in and make like jalebis and different food
like
for the kids.
Like a whole week of just like fantastic celebration of food and culture on India.
They would give all the kids the henna,
and we'd have turban tying, and you would learn different dances, and just an entire week. So each year, the entire week, everything that happened in your class was a celebration of India. And then they would have local booths and fairs that happened all day long, and your class would just go to the different ones.
Because I've heard of schools that have International Week. Most of my schools I've worked at have had International Week, which is, if it's not a host national school, that was more Honduran Week, right? But or they'd make up things and celebrate each class and choose a different country around the world. But when you have 22 different countries represented in your classroom, and then you have an India Week, and then you have probably an International Week too, didn't you?
We did.
They love celebrations. I mean, the elementary school is all about celebrations anyway. Yeah. Well, was it attached to was it a K through 12 school, by the way?
It was.
And it was all all buildings on the same campus, or were they split?
It was,
we were all on the same campus.
Oh,
but
and he's showing me a pool.
Yeah,
showing me a picture
we pull
of
up a
your
picture
pool
of this.
right now.
Were teachers allowed to use
yes,
the pool?
Yes.
they were. And it's a really nice pool.
It's a great
It looks
pool.
beautiful. I want to go to this school.
There was actually a room under the pool that we dedicated, and we called it I'm trying to think, but it was each classroom in the elementary had a day or a time, one day a week where you would go and you would just read, and it would just be a book room.
And they had pillows on the floor
and couches, and so it was just
like the environment was just pristine for reading.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great story. I almost want to go to teach at this school now because I don't know if I want to go to New Delhi, but what are some of the, let's switch gears a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about the hardships, like some of the things that you had to transition from living in the States to transitioning to India? That's part of living overseas too, right?
Right. I'd say three things come to my mind. One is food.
They have food there.
They have food there. They do not have. They do not have red meat.
No red meat.
Oh, no red meat. Yes.
So no red meat. So that was, that's just been a part of my.
Because cows are sacred.
That is true. Yes.
Right.
And coming
that's
from
part of their
Texas, that
culture
could be
and
a
religion.
challenge.
Right. So that was a challenge, and also, just certain comfort foods you're used to. They just didn't stock many international foods. So.
Yep.
That would be one thing. Second would be the pollution. And I would not say India as a whole. I mean, there's certain parts of India that are amazing, blue skies, beautiful. Delhi itself, though, it's a
major metropolitan area that's got a lot of pollution and a lot of humanity.
Yes. While we were there, it overtook Beijing as the number one most polluted city in the world as far as air pollution.
And I would say not only air pollution, but noise pollution as well. It
never stops.
It was constant noise, never stopped.
Yeah. And then, third is just you deal with poverty that is on a different level than anything you would have ever seen in the States. So that's a challenge.
Real world poverty.
Exactly.
Right there.
Yeah. So, going home, and we take an auto home before we bought a car, which was an interesting experience driving in India. But, you'd see naked children on the street running around begging for money. And that's tough to handle on a day-to-day basis.
I have a question for you. Do you ever give them money? Did you have rules about that for your family?
No, what we actually did is we would buy candies or granola bars and bottled waters and juices. And so when they would come, we would give them a juice and a granola bar. Because if they had the money and how they had to deal with the money would be, we never knew where it would go, but we knew if we gave them food, they could eat it.
In Cambodia, and I always go back to my stories to relate with you, but in Cambodia, it's the same thing. There's a lot of poverty. It's world poverty. It's a very, very poor nation developing. And I just had my own rule that I would never just give a boy or girl money. And if they wanted something from me, I usually had them, I would buy a 3-day-old newspaper from them or something, but I would give them some food. Mm-hmm. I would give them crackers, and they'd eat it immediately. Oh. And the reason I did that is because I had reached out. I had some good friends that were living there before me, and I learned from some of their good experiences and bad experiences. I learned from some of the other teachers that these kids in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, were being handled. So a little boy on the street would look like he needed some money, and tourists come by and give him some money. And if you watch from just afar and you watch what happens to that little boy, at some point he goes to an adult that takes the money from him, and he'll never eat. He'll never get that money. They're using him as a tool. And I can imagine it happens other ways around India, like the same thing, because they have even babies, even women carrying a baby. I would never give them anything except food, which they eat right away. So good. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm not the only one. There's so many ways to go about that.
I do think that that's one thing that teachers who are thinking about teaching overseas need to think about, because oftentimes the schools that we teach at are nice schools that have well-to-do families, no matter where they come from, and usually right beside that, usually in the big cities, there's poverty. So you have these two extremes. I remember in Yemen, which people think of as one of the poorest countries in the world, but many of our students would have the latest sports car SUVs, Porsches, and fancy cars, but right beside that massive sort of poverty that Sana'a had as well. So I think it's hard to get your mind around it. How do you react to that? And some people really struggle with that, I think. And so I think it's good to think about those things.
For sure.
Those are also opportunities to help out too. I mean, did you guys do any kind of housing? What's it called? When you go out and you help in certain groups,
like service work, maybe. Or?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the school itself did a lot of that, and we had
outreach programs, right?
Yeah, we had outreach programs. There was actually just within walking distance from the school a huge kind of outdoor living area that, I mean, I don't even. We did a lot, and we also. Like we would, if we needed furniture built or whatever, we would hire someone who lived in that area who, and there was an expert there for every little thing. And,
we actually had cat trees made.
Oh, we're going to talk about cats. What's a cat tree? What's a cat tree? You guys had cats.
Yeah, you plant a cat and the tree grows.
I love this segue.
Now, your family doubled in size during your time in India. I wonder if you could just briefly, would it be okay if we just briefly asked about that when Tabitha's done telling her story?
Cat trees.
So we did, and then the school actually partnered with a local school, and we would take our students there, and they would build relationships and things. And there was something on campus, I think, called Helping Hand. And it would just a lot of, I will say the school was very dedicated to a lot of service and outreach programs that we probably didn't even scratch the surface of. And I know they've gone even further with it.
Yeah. And I think even in upper grades as well, they do a lot more than even the elementary does. But
well, that's a part of, and a lot of international schools strive to give back to their community and then go worldwide. But some of these schools are living right next to poverty and need to take care of that. I've had a lot of experience like that too, but I want to hear more about cats. What's a cat tree?
Well, a cat tree is a type of furniture that is built. The cats can climb up and down with scratching posts and little carpet areas. And so
you had two cats.
We acquired two cats.
It actually goes back before that to bats. Bats are the
reason why we have cats.
And we're not talking about baseball bats here, are we?
No, we
vampire bats. You mean bats?
Bats. We went to bed one night and heard a sound and turned on the light. Didn't see anything. Turn off the light. Trying to go to sleep, hear the sound again a couple times, turn it on, and about the third time we turn the light on, we see there's a bat just
circling
around our bedroom.
And so we, did what we normally would do is we called for help.
Scream and then call for help. That's the protocol.
I think I layered up with lots of clothes and had a tennis racket trying to chase it out.
You're the man of the house. You need to get a tennis racket. Beat that thing out.
So we thought, go ahead.
Go ahead, no.
No, we thought we had it covered. They came in and found quite a few holes that we stuffed.
Little tiny holes, because they can get through almost anything.
And they stuffed like plastic sacks through them.
Yep, the temporary thing.
The temporary fix. And we
went to vacation.
We went on vacation. It was we had a week off in Sri Lanka. And when we came back, sure enough, there was a bat actually in the house, and he had kind of gotten injured a little bit.
We saw a blood trail, and we followed it.
And there it was in the shelf.
Oh, horrible.
And so called to have someone come and get it, and they were very unfazed. As a matter of fact, they brought it to us and said, "See, what are you afraid of?" And that's when I made the decision that if I was going to have pets in my house, I would want to choose them instead of them
choosing you.
Me. Yes. And so that's how we called a local veterinarian, and they had that. I had the week before 2 kittens that had been found in the dumpster. Someone had brought them to be fostered, and they asked if we were interested in them, and the rest is kind of history.
What are their names?
Star and Salem. It's a sordid history, but
and they will have been with us 10 months next month.
10 years.
10 months. 10 years.
It only feels like 10 months.
There you go.
Well, I'm sure we're all chomping at the bit for the story that's coming.
Yeah.
I have to hear the story. So let's jump a little bit ahead. How long did you stay in India?
3 years.
You stayed in 3 years and had a great time there, and then you moved on to another school. But tell us a little bit about the cat moving.
Yeah, so we were actually going back to the States for the summer, because we had to go there first before we moved to our next school.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of time, and so we needed to go
Can't leave
back.
the cats, yeah.
Right.
So we decided to pack them up, and we had heard all these great stories about cats that traveled with friends of ours in the cabin, and they knew just what kind of cat bag we needed and just all the things that would make the trip successful, and all of them had such a wonderful, glorious time that...
And our vet said, oh, they'll be fine.
They'll be fine. They'll be fine. So we did all those things. We bought all of those cat carriers and, the feeding bowls to do all of the stuff with them. We were prepared to go. We set it out for them the week before, so they could get used to it. I mean, we did all of the right things. Remember, we've got a researcher here on our hands. All the right things until the day of. So we put them in, we head to the airport. They hate it. They're screaming their heads off the whole time there.
So do you each have one?
Yeah, we each have one.
You each have a cat carrier and some cat toys and some extra cat stuff.
Right, we're all
and
ready to go.
And then you have a carry-on maybe also, and all your other luggage that you're taking back home or whatever. Okay.
We get there, fortunate for us. I think the airline person saw us with cats, and they offered to upgrade us to a business for just a little bit more. And
I'm taking my cats with me next time.
Well, we found out that was pretty much the lifesaver. If that hadn't happened, I don't know where we'd be today. So we get up there, and this is a 9-hour flight to Germany. I think we're going to Frankfurt. Yeah. So we're, they're tucked in. Everything's good. We've had a smooth flight.
They were loud the whole way, though.
Loud, but for the most part, it was going okay. And just to give you an idea, we were in an upper plane with stairs that went up. So we were in the up deck.
No kidding.
So there were about, I would say, 30 passengers up there with us.
Yeah.
So we weren't disturbing too many people.
Yeah, you were up on the upper class area.
Yeah.
Well, So we get an announcement that, okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to, the plane is, we're
45 minutes away. We're starting our
descent. That's what it is. Starting our descent. And everything is going good, but we're still stressed from all that, and everyone's buckle in, put your phones away, all of those things. I look down and I see that Salem, which is our boy cat, I said, Aaron, Salem is out.
What?
And
didn't he know he was supposed to buckle up?
And Aaron looks down and goes to grab him, and Salem takes off running down the aisle.
And it's not only running down the aisle, he is jumping on the back of people's seats. People are screaming,
hurling curses at us.
One guy cursing at
cats.
me. Yes, it goes on. It seems like forever.
And I want to say that I was instrumental in this and stood there frozen. So I just want to let everyone know.
I was running up and down the aisle chasing him. He's jumping from seat to seat.
But again, being up in the upper deck, the reason why I say it helps us is by the flight attendants, he would run to the flight attendants, see them, and turn and run back the other way. So it wasn't like a full length of the plane. It was just the upper seat.
It's like playing pickle with a live cat.
Right. And again, if
they hadn't been there, it probably would have gone down the stairs, and who knows what.
And also, if the phones hadn't had to been put away, I'm sure it would have been a YouTube sensation by now. But finally,
I caught him in mid-jump.
Aaron grabs him.
Bear hug.
Baseball hands.
Pulls him in. I get the carrier, and we realize that he is not unzipped. He has pried the zipper prongs apart. So he spent the entire 8 hours.
And his fingernails were bloody from doing that the whole time.
8 hours, and that cat gets out of his own zippered carrier.
Yeah.
And broke it.
He broke it. So we put him in there. We're holding on to the tops. We land. Everyone gets off because we can't bear to face the public. And the flight attendants was like, okay, you can get off, but we need you to go to this area. You can't get on the next flight with your cats.
You need to put them underneath the plane.
I got to go underneath the plane.
Wow.
But we didn't have the stuff to put them underneath.
And
so
we didn't have
from Germany to from Frankfurt back to the U.S., you had to put them underneath, and you didn't have.
What did you do?
No, so
we went to buy. There was a place in the airport where you could actually buy the hard case.
Okay.
But we had missed our flight. They had kicked us off the flight. We had to rebook.
They kicked you off your next flight.
But here was the crazy thing is Lufthansa was going on strike 2 days from that time. And so there were no flights the rest of that day. And we were like, just get us to the States. We'll figure it out. And there was only one flight the next day that had space underneath the plane. Because, you can't have it. There's only a certain number of animals that can go underneath the plane. And so we were there probably working with the airline for, I don't know, 3 hours in line just with one person trying to work it all out.
It's funny how you say working with, and you guys are like, you just got over this cat-tastrophe on the plane. And, yeah, exactly, on the plane, and now you still have to get to the States from Frankfurt. That's another 7 hour.
And meanwhile, you have cats who are in cages,
meowing,
and then one of them's injured a little bit, and they're getting dehydrated.
We had, and then not to even mention, once we finally got the ticket for the next day, then we had to worry about getting a hotel, and they were having
pet friendly.
It was pet friendly, and they were having a conference in Frankfurt, so a lot of the hotels were booked. So it was,
It's your average day as an international teacher, right, guys? We travel, we're professionals, but that's one of my favorite stories ever.
Yeah.
Did you get back then? I mean, that next day?
What should have been a 25-hour total trip ended up being
48 hours.
48, and we were on one of the last Lufthansa flights before they went on strike.
Wow.
And so actually once, them going under the plane, when we went to pick them up in Dallas, they actually weren't saying a peep. They were very subdued. Everything was great until they saw us. And then, oh my goodness, if cats could talk, all that they would say to us. And but it was smooth. Once we got them, they were perfectly fine. Clearly they've been with us, and we had to bring them over, especially later. And
so they've lived in multiple countries.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's another lesson you have to learn. If you really want to bring your pets with you overseas, it's possible, but not for every country, not for every school.
Not for the faint of heart.
And not for the faint of heart for flying. Kent, what does your wife say about when you guys travel? I mean, do they ban you from traveling too because you're too loud and you're running through the whole...
My cat's fine. It's me the plane worries about.
The cat has a first class just so you can get on board.
The cat gets the seat. I'm down underneath it.
Well, I want to keep it within our time. It's been great having you guys on here. I just wanted to ask you if you had any last comments or any last stories.
I will say the one thing about India, and I would say it with other international schools, is we bought a car there and drove there, and driving in other countries is also a very different experience than driving in the States. So
absolutely, they should try it at some point. Even if you don't buy a car, you should try driving in other countries, no matter what, right?
So
part of the experience,
right? On an average day, there's no rules in India driving, I would
Darwinian,
say.
Right?
Very much so.
3 lanes drawn, 6 lanes in reality.
In all directions.
We would, on a normal day, besides buses, and I mean, we'd encounter...
We saw elephants,
cows,
animals in the roads,
horses,
right? Yes.
donkeys.
Hey, that reminds me, I do have a joke. How many people can you fit on a bus in India?
How many?
One more. It goes for Egyptian trains. It goes for lots of things. Like, it makes sense, though. I mean, they're literally in the way that life is overseas. There's so many different ways of doing it, and part of India, I just see the balcony. There's always one room for one more, and they're always fighting back and forth, right?
So that was an adventure every day going to school, because I mean, it was a 20-minute drive. You would probably.
Give or take. I would just say if you're thinking about going international, just go with an open mind and know that what you might think, the reality can be quite different, but there's also a lot of great experiences out there.
As we've heard. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely worth it. Do it every time. And just as long as you, again, just know that you're putting yourself out there to broaden your horizons.
Did you drive too, or is it just Aaron that drove?
Just Aaron.
You made him drive all the time. I bet you got really good at it,
I was the lookout. Turn, watch out, swerve. But no, just Aaron.
Yeah.
I love that advice, Kent, right? There's a reality, but there's a lot of great experiences, and we sort of mix them together with the difficult experiences, though, right?
And I don't think we would. I think we'd do it all over again, given the choice.
I certainly will.
I would.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for you guys to come on to our show.
Thank you both. You guys are awesome.
I'm not talking about you though.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, once again, we had Aaron and Tabitha, a teaching couple, tell us mostly about India and their experiences coming out of the States and going to India to teach for 3 years and then getting back with cats. I think it was a great episode. Thank you so much. And Kent, we'll have to do this again. You'll have to sit in for Matt, right?
Absolutely. This is Kent, the cat guy, signing off.
And Greg, the single guy with the cat people here. This is fantastic. We'll see you next episode, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks so much.
Isn't that fun?
That was great. You guys are the best.
You get warmed up. You get warmed up
gosh,
after a while, don't you?
Voices. Did you see how good this sounds?